Welcome back to Two Pentecostals and a Microphone. I'm Bryce Kyle, one of the said Pentecostals. We're so glad you can join us today. We have a couple very special episodes lined out for you guys. One you're getting ready to listen to in just a few moments, and the other will be next week. Thank you so much for listening today. Today, I'll be interviewing my co-host, the great Jaredith Mize. Next week, the roles will be reversed as Jaredith will interview me. I'm looking forward to getting to know Jaredith a little more. I hope all of you are as well. We get into a broad range of subjects, from our walks with God to ministry to our mutual love of all that is music, to our favorite books, and much, much more. So without further ado, let's get on with the interview. Tell us a little about yourself and how we got to this point. Just a brief little introduction of Jaredith Mize.
Okay, so I was born... Okay, do we want to go that far back?
As far as back as you like.
Okay, so I was born... basically in the country. I was raised kind of first several years in the country. Spent a lot of time with my grandparents on their farm. This is my mom's side of the family, and they are all very devout Methodists. So in the first few years of my life, I attended a Methodist church with my mom and my grandparents, and my dad was, I guess you call him Pentecostal, in the sense that he sat in a recliner and watched Jimmy Swaggart on TV.
Right.
So he never missed a Sunday.
Yeah.
But he didn't go to church.
The convenience of televangelism.
Right.
Yeah.
It's convenient, I guess. Yeah. You don't have to move out of your easy chair. So,
right.
So that was kind of what where I started. Now, my dad did come from a Pentecostal family. So at some point, I'm not sure exactly why, my parents decided to start going to an apostolic church again. My mom never had been, I guess, but my dad decided to start going. I was probably, I want to say 4 years old, maybe, if I'm remembering this correctly, but I have very few memories, and I'm not sure if my memories of the Methodist church are later when I just visited, but I can vaguely remember some things. But when we started going to an apostolic church, and it was, I believe if I remember correctly, I was 5 when I was baptized and 6 when I got the Holy Ghost. So I was very young.
Right.
And I've spent most of my life then in the church. My dad's family, like I said, was Pentecostal, so he had a background in this.
Yeah.
But I don't know, I guess I was just really sensitive as a kid, and I responded easily, I guess. I don't know, I was very, very sensitive, very sincere, and I got the Holy Ghost really early.
Sure. And
I felt the call into ministry pretty early, and we can talk about that maybe later, but anyway, that's kind of where I started. Now, I am 33 years old. I'm married to my wife, Ann. We have a son. He's 9 years old. His name's Aiden. And I'm a minister. I have a local license with the UPC, and a minister at my local church. I'm involved in, obviously, this podcast.
Numerous other
things. Ministry stuff. I do a lot of teaching. One thing that I guess I should mention is I do have a secular job. I worked for my church for a while, which was great, but I work for a uniform company. I'm sales director for them, and really just pretty busy. It's hard sometimes to even find, how it is, Bryce. But
right.
It's hard to find time even to record these episodes sometimes, let alone you do the editing, and it's a lot.
A lot to put on our plates.
It is, but we really do enjoy it. I hope you guys are enjoying it. I love it.
Yeah,
I think it's great.
As do I.
So anyway, that's kind of where I started and then where I am. But I guess we can fill in
the
middle.
how important is the Pentecostal heritage to someone? Because I don't have a Pentecostal heritage,
Right?
and so I don't know how. I mean, I see people talk about it all the time, heritage, and I'm a fourth generation Pentecostal, and it's just that's important to a lot of people. How much is it important to you?
The heritage. Okay, so I did grow. I am. Let's see, several generations here. Let's see. My great grandfather attended an apostolic church. My great grandfather was a pastor, and he was licensed with the PAW. My grandpa was in the apostolic church most of his life, or a good portion of his life, and my dad was actually a licensed minister and a home missions pastor with ALJC, and now here I am. I guess that would make me fifth generation apostolic, and I'm licensed with the UPCI. So yeah, there is this long heritage in the apostolic movement, and it is important to me in a way. And then on the flip side of that same coin, it's not. Mm-hmm. And I'll explain what I mean by that. I am really grateful for that heritage. I'm grateful for this experience that I have. I'm grateful that it was easy for me, I guess, to get into this movement because I was born into it, basically born into
right.
it. Not technically, I guess, but basically as a small child, I was here because of this heritage of my dad and my grandparents and great grandparents even.
Sure.
So I'm thankful for that. I'm glad that my son's going to have that. On the other hand, a lot of what I do and feel and it's not really about that. It's about my relationship with God, and it's about things that I'm doing in the present.
Yeah, I think that's what I was really trying to bring out, was because I think we get too hung up on the past so much, and we're not really moving forward.
I agree.
Yeah.
I feel like that a lot of people do focus on this heritage, and they talk maybe too much about the heritage of the Pentecostal heritage. And yeah, they talk about the old landmarks and all these things that are all well and good, but in reality, that didn't really do much for me.
Right.
It came down to me actually getting a relationship with God. Actually, and we'll talk a little bit more about that journey probably as the episode goes on, but it came down to me and God. Mm-hmm. And if it hadn't been for that, then all the heritage in the world, I could be a 1,000th generation and it wouldn't make any difference because that heritage doesn't save you.
Right.
That heritage doesn't prepare you for ministry. That heritage doesn't really do much for you.
Right.
So if you do get stuck in the past, you're stuck.
Yeah. I think it's Apostolic Archives.
Yes.
I don't know if you know.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that.
Okay. They have a museum.
Yes, they do.
All right. I just found it was funny to me because they have ministers' clothes on display. Like
that's interesting.
Yeah, because he's been posting pictures of it.
I didn't realize that. I followed him a little bit, but
so this is brother so and so's shoes that he wore. This so and so tent revival or whatever. I
guess it's interesting, kind of, but it's
yeah. I mean, I like history as much as anyone else, but like at some point, it's a little vain.
Right. Yeah, I get that. I was in a Catholic hospital in Iowa. I'm trying to think where it was exactly. I was in Rock Island, Illinois. That's where I was. It's Quad Cities, Iowa, Illinois. I was in this hospital, and they have some relics from saints.
Yeah.
And they have a little piece of Saint Francis of Assisi. Not his clothes, but an actual piece of Saint Francis.
Wow.
I'm not sure if it's like tooth or bone, or it's tiny, but it's in a case. And I think we should stop. We definitely should stop short of that.
Yeah.
but there is almost this preacher worship sometimes. It seems like in our movement, and especially these guys who are really influential and it's good to honor them, and I guess the history is interesting. But you gotta be careful not to live so much in the past that you don't move forward and you don't do things in the present.
Right. Besides an obvious calling to ministry and obviously calling from God, what really made you pursue a license to be licensed minister.
Okay, so it started, I feel like, when I was really young. I was probably, it was just before we moved from Vincennes, Indiana, to Columbus, Indiana, with my mom's job, and moved from where my mom's family was from up here to Columbus and Seymour area, where my dad's family was from.
Yeah.
And it would have been right before that I first felt a call, and that was I probably would have been 8 years old, maybe. I was young. And I felt some kind of call, and specifically, I didn't really know at the time. I don't think I knew anything at the time. I think it was because maybe it had to do with the idea of the adventure of foreign missions, or just the idea of being, I guess, the self-sacrifice, the romanticism of it or whatever. And then again, maybe it was more direct than that. Maybe God was specifically calling me to that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how to feel about it this far out, but that's kind of what I felt at the time. But I definitely felt God pulling me and calling me to do something. And then it was several years really before I pursued anything. I got lost a little bit during my teenage years and my early 20s. And finally came back around, and I feel like really getting serious about living for God coincided with, there were two events in my life that changed my course. One was getting married to some degree. I got married at 19, and my wife was extremely focused on, finding the right mate that God wanted for her, and making sure it was in the will of God and that I was not going to lead her astray. I was really focused on getting married because I was in love and I wanted to get married, and I didn't really think too much about it, and I was just carnal enough that I didn't even pray about it. And luckily she was praying for the both of us. And at one point, actually, she broke up with me for, I think, a month. It was more. She says it wasn't breaking up. She says it was like taking a break.
Like a time of reflection.
Yeah, she reflected, she prayed, she fasted.
Yeah.
I cried, I didn't eat, loathed myself. It was self-loathing. And actually, I remember vividly one thing in particular. I lost like 50 pounds or something. I didn't eat. And my mom, one of my favorite things was deer chili. My mom made deer chili and brought it to my room because I didn't leave my room. I don't know if I even showered during that month, but she brought me deer chili and I wouldn't eat it. And she knew something was really wrong. So anyway, I was heartbroken. Long story short, we got back together. She thought that she got her answer and that everything was going to be okay regardless of my faults. So we ended up getting married at 19. Now, that changed course for me slightly. I feel like I was still pretty far off track in some ways. I was still probably from the age of 13 or 14, maybe 14 to maybe 13 to 24, 25. I was basically going to church. I wasn't really in church, as you might. I was at church.
Right.
And I went because my parents expected me to, everybody expected me to. I think we talked about this in a recent episode, but it was just the thing that I needed to do. And then being that close to it, I finally was easily able to come back. So I'm glad I stayed in proximity of the church, but really I wasn't that much in. Now, when I got married, I did start to focus more on this idea of, hey, you're an adult now. You have to... And I still made a lot of mistakes. Like, oh man, I got to grow up.
Yeah.
And I didn't right away for a few years, actually.
Yeah.
And I made a lot of mistakes. Luckily, none of those were drastic enough to, cause my marriage to fall apart. Although God was looking out for me because I was stupid. Mm-hmm. I just did some stupid things. And I wasn't really focused. And then, but I think I did understand the seriousness of it. And I was like, I was in that place where I'm going to get it together. I'm going to get really serious about this eventually, soon, tomorrow, someday.
Right.
Finally, I think the moment really when it changed for me, when Anne, and this would have been a Sunday morning in 2007, Anne came into our room. I think I was still asleep, if I remember correctly. And she had a pregnancy test in her hand. And she broke the news to me